Okay, welcome everyone for this week's on conference. I quickly want to frame where we're at. Last week we had a discussion about our individual motivations, and they appear to be very aligned. Um, in essence, I think it's about two things. One, very concrete, taking action on enabling local um, agricultural supply chains, very close loops between the consumer and the producer. And on the other hand, we want to learn how to repeat that process that we're currently exploring and developing as we go into something that other people can use for their environments to come up with similar solutions. And then the important question became, so now what is it exactly that we talk about when we talk about the last point in the post-harvest value chain? And how do we test some hypothesis in this? And through that, and during that, KIP 2 came up with an idea that Luther, who would be a direct participant in, and I think also Anesso actually, Luther found to be a good idea. So KIP 2 wrote a summary of that during the week, and I would like to start with that. So that's KIP 2. You could go through that summary and bring everybody up to speed, and then I would love to focus the conversation on establishing the most important question that we have to ask to understand whether this will work, and how to get an answer for that question. So I would be super happy if we were able to do that today. Okay, over to you, KIP 2.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, I think what I shared was more or less a summary of the specific idea that we shared last time we talked about. Maybe I threw in a few more specific ideas that I would love for us to discuss. And I see these as just one of many possibilities or specific activities we can focus on. So, by no means is it like the final thing. I don't see it as that, but an invitation to think together on something that is really specific and actionable. So the thought really is, okay, expressed in a few different ways. Sorry, I haven't pulled the document yet. My fault. But the idea is the clear opportunity for me that I see is, Motherland is composed of people who come from different regions of Africa and Europe, and we have broad networks, but we also have deep local connections wherever we live and operate in. And we know that local supply chain solutions are great. They're good for the economists, the local economists. They're great for the environments, for the for everything local. We also understand that everyone needs food, and that the problem of food exists everywhere, or the problems that affect food. For example, price. Food is expensive everywhere mostly, and supply chains are long, broken in some cases, and the idea is that whereas these problems are common, there is no overarching solution that enables replicating these solutions everywhere in a way that is still like, localized. So in many ways, you could think of this as an attempt to globalize the food supply chains, both make them globally repeatable, but respecting the desire to make them locally driven solutions. So well, I guess one way of understanding this is having a standard. So there are industry standards in certain sectors and or protocols, if you will, that different organizations or stakeholders in that industry subscribe to. For example, shipping. I shared the example of a shipping API, but that's very specific. There is also certain things within the shipping industry are standardized. For example, the size of a container is the same everywhere around the planet. Or I guess the protocols of clearance and things like those. I'm not sure, maybe someone has done research. There might be some sort of standards around food and food supply systems. But at the moment, I do not know if there exist any. And why doesn't such a thing exist? Yet everyone consumes food. It's like a basic human need. So all that being said, I feel like we as Motherland have the opportunity to find a framework or a specific product that can be put to use to generate and basically facilitate thriving local supply chains in a way that is repeatable across the board. And again, the premise there is that these problems that are that exists in the supply chains are common everywhere. Yet the solutions vary so much, and it's hard to scale these solutions. So a company like Price Palais, they've observed that food in Lagos is expensive, and if you can pallet, to borrow from Luther's terminology, you can group people together. It brings the price of food down, and I can see that working very well here in Nairobi. Why can't we do this in a more scalable way by sharing learnings, by sharing data, by sharing the solutions to common problems, whether it's across product, across marketing or market development, across customer experience aspects, for example. So these are sort of the things that I guess I was thinking about and hoping we can all to think around it. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Totally. Are there any questions, especially from you guys, Anisu, Luther, Tawanda?
Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, where's the song, by the way?
Oh, that one. Well, still five line.
The national anthem of Motherland.
Motherland. And forced into doing something real.
Okay, I think I understood everything that Kiptu said. If I understood everything that you said, Kiptu, you're trying to bridge not exactly bridge the network between consumers and farmers, but enable the ones that are already bridging that gap to make them better. Right. Yeah. So I understand, because when I read the document that you sent, I didn't really understand. But now that you've explained it and you've clarified this question, I understand it now much better.
What would you hope, Anissa, as a producer, to get out of this, and how would you be willing to provide information into a system like that?
Okay. As a producer, I would say that on top of my head would need an advert, with a theme song that will be talking mainly of the things that we want to do. someone has to listen to it and be able to pick out, okay, for me, this is what they do, and I can get them at this point, social media page or these numbers. The other thing that I would want from this, the main thing that I want from this is there has to be excellent customer service for it to thrive. I think Kipto talked about customer experience when he was explaining. They need to be excellent customer experience for this also to thrive.
Okay, and so one important thing that might come out of there. So let's assume there is information on what producers in your region are producing or are planning to produce in the next season. And then let's say somebody decides to build an app on top of that information that informs you, Anesu, as one of the producers, whether there's a good mix of things that are being produced in your region for the demand that is existing. Does it make sense?
No, I didn't really understand. But before you explain again, when you asked me what I expect as a producer,
yeah,
you were saying as a producer, as farm producer, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, I had gotten it wrong. I think my answer is it was not really clear. But now that I understand,
Okay.
if I have a farm, what I would expect from this?
Correct.
I would expect Motherland to take a further step as to bringing things from my land to the customer's table. Most producers here, all they want at the end of the day is the money. The lesser work they have, the better. So they can just end on producing. We come, we bring the customers to them virtually, and then they sell it to them. Less work for them. That's what I would want. I've already harvested the produce. Now what I need is for Motherland to help me get to the customer conveniently.
Mm-hmm. And how much work would you be willing to put into making that happen? So you have to put in information somehow on what produce you have, when it'll be ready, how much of it for now, and also for the next season for your plans. How much work would you be willing to put into this?
Provided that there is assured returns, I would put in 100% of the work that I need to put. I make sure that there are customers who can talk about my produce, who can refer other customers to me. I'll make sure that the Motherland standard, I match Motherland standard, because Motherland, I'm pretty sure, as Kipto was saying, they have to have a standard of fruits. We need the standard of vegetables for that. I'll make sure that my produce meets that standard so that I won't be left out.
Mm-hmm. And so usually in the beginning of such an operation, there's what we like to call the cold start problem. So you said if you have a guarantee of this being successful, then you're going to put in a lot of work, or willing to put in a lot of work. Now, if you don't have that guarantee, but if you have a certain hope or trust, but you don't have a guarantee, how would that change?
It would change the amount of produce I would be willing to put into it. If I already have other revenue streams, I'll probably put only a quarter to almost a half of my produce so as to test and see if this will return. And if it does return, that first batch, if it does return, I will increase.
Okay. So as a first step for you, it would be good to say, okay, this is the amount of produce I have in total, and out of that, there's 75% that is already committed, but
Yes.
25% could be committed, and but only if whoever is using that information on the Motherland platform is quick enough to buy it from you, something like that, right? If
Yes.
you have another opportunity to sell it, you will sell it, right?
If I have another, yeah, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
If a producer has another opportunity to sell it and the other opportunities are not paying well for him and his family, I would switch.
Okay.
And also one question from my side. I think there are two distinctive ways of bringing your produce to the consumer. One is to have a middleman that is working in a way better way than you expected today. Yeah, because right now I think we have some kind of challenges to make that work in an efficient way. So it needs to improve. So the one question is, okay, do you think there will be maybe because of Motherland, someone who's helping you as a middleman to bring your produce to the consumer? Or the other direction is to say maybe you as a producer utilizing Motherland, hiring people to bring the produce to the people. So without the motherland and without the middleman, but you are able to take care of as a producer, becoming also the responsible entity for the supply, so bringing the produce to the consumer, because someone has to do the job, right? It's not happening by robots. We need people to do it. And the question is, who is the one who should be in charge? Someone who is called the middleman, using hopefully Motherland technologies, yeah, or provided technologies by Motherland, bring it to the people. Or maybe it's even better to stay all in your responsibility and bring it to the people by yourself, but you need maybe to hire someone to do that job.
Okay. So let's say I'm a backyard farmer. My land is just the backyard of my house.
Yeah.
The last thing I want is more cost in my produce. Yeah. So what then, looking at those two options, I would prefer, now that I'm a small farmer, I would prefer that I hire you, you do the marketing and the selling. All I do is the production. Okay. I say that tomatoes are ready. Customers, let the customers know. And then if there's anyone who want to buy, looking at your timeline, what is it called? The time that Motherland takes to deliver to a person. Tomatoes are ready, come and pick them, get them to the customer. If it means you taking a card as Motherland because you'd have done something, is cool. I leave it, I stay with my card. But if I am a big farmer with a very big farm with 2, 3, 4, 5 thousands of hectares, I would want to control my how my products move from my farm to the plate. I would want to still stay in control so that I know everything that is going on. I don't want people to take advantage of my size.
I think that absolutely makes sense, but the question is how big a farm has to be to take responsibility as in direct sale to bring the produce to the people or to the market. So there are I just know that from Europe, yeah, or from the US, there are market gardeners that have 1.5 hectares taking care of everything themselves and become highly profitable because they cut out the middleman and they are really working on how to make the supply chain from farm to fork as efficient as possible. Yeah, so that there is as less waste as necessary and as less time spent to bring the produce to the people. Because if you're spending too much time here, it will cost you too much money if you hire someone, or if you do it by yourself, you're not able to spend the time in the field. Yeah, which then also will cut your revenue potential. Yeah, because your yields might go down. So, and this, I think we need to think about what is the sweet spot, yeah, that the farmer become a direct seller, and what needs to happen that really the biggest chunk of the value chain is really at hands of the farmer, so that the farmer can utilize this margin, right? And I don't know if it needs to be a couple thousand hectares. Yeah, maybe it's possible with less, but there will be certain type of requirements that this will work. Yeah, and probably right now it wouldn't work because it's all too inefficient.
Yeah, now that you said that, Sebastian, I'm also thinking that whatever solution we're going to give, we need to close every vagueness in it. We don't want the farmer to go back and say, come back to us and say, okay, this is nothing new. I can do this on my own. What is something new that you can give me so that I use Motherland? So now that you say that, we need to make something that a farmer will be like, okay, yes, this can actually help me. I have a lot of land, but you know what? This can actually help me. I will not need too much of my already there sales agents. I would also need you. But then again, we were also talking about this being scalable. And I guess Motherland also having salespeople ready to be hired would also be good. So we have 2-3 options to look at as Motherland.
Thank you.
Luther, what's your take? You described some feedback last week already, but I'm really curious on your take now.
Sorry. So I'm babysitting, so you might hear some baby noise. So I'm just trying to like remember our train of thought last week and match it with. So if I may ask, Kipto, okay, I read in that description in Notion that, I mean, the idea I got from last week was that the stakeholders would be able to draw out information and also put in information to the system so that people are sharing knowledge and all that. So in the case of, for instance, Price Valley, what kind of data or information would be needed on Motherland? Like what do you expect us to put in, and what can we get out of it? So if there's clarity on that, then my next chain of thought can be well formed. I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah, I get it. I think I do. I would say it's a great question, and its answer depends really on what we identify as a specific solution, right? Or as the specific. So I think as a group, our motivation is to find a solution that is broadly applicable, that is applicable in any context, in any country or market, but that also respects the local context very much. So in a way, it's not clear at the moment. Anis has mentioned that the solution has to be not vague. It has to be disambiguated, and I do agree. I can't say I have the answer, but it's our job as a group to hopefully come up with one.
Okay.
Yeah, but let me just throw some ideas. I'll speak, so that maybe you'll pick. Maybe you'll see if there's any sense in this. That's how ideas come up, right? What I think, the challenge that I see is startups like yours and others around the continent do a lot of very hard work acquiring customers, and that becomes your mode. It becomes like your. It's kind of like the secret sauce, if you will. Because if another company has that data and knows their customers' behavior, that person might take your business away. So it's a potentially real challenge or potential blocker to this concept. But I do think that there's a way to share knowledge, to share data, that in a way that is not that doesn't basically introduce unfair competitive practices, but at the same time allow the parties involved to grow faster, to become better. So in my mind, what I'm thinking is, look, there's a country like Chad, right? There's probably no startup like Price Pali there, but the major cities in Chad have the same problems or similar problems as Lagos. The food is expensive, the supply chains are long. What if there was a solution that makes it very easy to start up in Chad or some other country that is not Lagos, that's not Nigeria? And that for me is really the sort of the ideal scenario. How to get there, I don't know, but there's some potential tools to help us. For example, like an open API of some kind, an open source API that allows anybody who's willing to start that business, to the operations, to get started.
So,
okay. So that's where I'm kind of stuck, like, but if you are looking at, there are, I don't know, maybe someone should say something and I'll be able to speak after.
I'd like to. I have a couple of images in my mind. I'm also we're exploring now, so anything can be questioned, etc. So I'm just, while Kiptu was speaking, there were some images that I had that could make sense in our context. By the way, Elizabeth just posted that she cannot make it because Saturdays are full for her. So if Price Pally provides information about what the users demand, what they want to buy, regardless of whether it's possible to provide for that, but you find information on what people want, and then you put that into a shared data pool via an API. So the amount of work in your end is very small, because you have to implement that API once and then it's done forever. And you don't share customer related information. So we don't know who these people are who want that specific product. We also don't know their exact location, but we know a rough region, let's say neighborhood. So at that stage in the Motherland database, we know the demand of a certain region, because a startup like Price Pally provides that information. On the other end, there's a startup that helps producers be more efficient, or to fight some pest, or I don't know what, right? So and that startup knows what the producers actually produce now and probably in the next season. So they provide that information in a similar way. And and now what we could do is we could inform the producers on two things. One thing is, what is the stuff that's being produced around you? And based on the demand in the markets that we see right now, what is the most optimal thing for you to produce right now in the next season to maximize your sales? Let's put it that way. Okay, so you know that there will be too little tomatoes, so you know that you will be doing tomatoes. You put that into the system now. So now we can give that information to Price Pally, so that you know who is producing the tomatoes in the next cycle. And maybe even in between, there's another startup that does the distribution, that does something like Uber Farm, and connects those two ends, right? So that's I'm just trying to put some concrete images onto the idea.
Yeah, I think that was like the context we had last week, and that definitely makes sense. But I think it needs more flesh, and probably more compelling solutions, because I think, like Lady said, what compels a producer to go online and come to Motherland and spend some time rather than going to sell or going to the farm? And from my experience in Africa, in Nigeria, where I'm from, the technology solutions that people tend to use are very, people describe them as headaches, like a very nagging problem. That's when people would tend to use your tech solution. Then I think we should also know who we are building for. Maybe that would also help us put more flesh. Definitely, we know the farmers, we know the consumers, but there are in-betweens that in between them there are still other players, like storage, warehousing, probably, because farmers nowadays, the farmers, from my understanding currently, many of these farmers just ship their stuff directly to the market, and whatever gets spoiled, whatever they make out of it, they make out of it. But there are storage facilities around, where in Lagos, that these farmers don't even know to use. So I think if there are other useful information apart from what we just discussed, like in the view of putting more flesh, I think maybe we should do that as well. Hoping that I made sense. Thanks.
I'm trying to build on that to understand whether I understood you. So let's say to
Okay.
continue that picture. Price Pally puts in consumer information. A startup working with the producers puts in the producer information. Then there could be a storage facility that learns about what is being overproduced, which means
Yeah.
it has an opportunity to offer storage capacity to very
Mm-hmm.
targeted to the producers.
Yeah.
And at the same time, let's say you at Price Pally, you consider your job to be focusing on optimizing the groups that's ordered together, but you don't want to have anything to do with the distribution. So there's another part, there's another startup that can offer
Yeah.
the distribution part, that can say, okay, I get an order, and I don't care whether that comes from Price Pally or some other startup or an individual or whoever. I just get that package of this stuff needs picked up in this location and brought to that other location. And so another startup can build a distribution system on the top of that.
So the challenge that I see is how to get the initial data, especially from the producer, into a digital data system, database, whatever. Yeah, because if you don't have the data, we can't do any type of the magic, right? And we know that there are probably a lot of the farmers are not capable of doing that. That might be a challenge. But even if they are capable, the question is how to incentivize those farmers to put their data on their produce, yeah, early on in a database that we can work with. And right now they wouldn't have any trust or incentive to do it, because why I should invest into putting all the information into the system that is not directly monetizing for me. So I think what we need to figure out is who has an interest, or what is the main value driver that a farmer would say, okay, it's cool to have my produce in the system, yeah, because I'm becoming and able to become a direct seller, kind of, and I can make more money out of that than not doing it, yeah. And because otherwise it's not going to change, or someone has the incentive to do it for the farmer, but then there is the risk that there will be a dependency from this middleman who's doing that again. So I think, just wrapping it up, the question is, how are we getting sufficient data from the producer side into a data system that we can do some magic, yeah, to provide, for example, Price Pally or any other supporter of the supply chain, to make the supply chain, the post-harvest supply chain, more efficient.
Yeah.
That's definitely important.
So to me, just trying to make sense of what Sebastian, Thomas, and Luther have said. It sounds to me like what we are proposing is let me call it a map of food, right? Where the food being produced, who's distributing the food, and who's asking for the food. That's how I see it fundamentally. So tracing the food from the farm itself to the port. And I do not know of like such a system that exists, and I think that's what we're describing. Now, how to get the data? I would say, let's think about how Google Maps. How did they get such a massive data set? One, they sent out vehicles with a lot of cameras around roads in the city of the world. But there's a much more bigger data set, I think, in terms of the businesses, right? any business is incentivized to put up their business, whether it's a salon, a barber shop, cafe, whatever it is. Most of them have entries on Google Maps, and it's a combination of user-generated data and Google itself having I guess product teams that push for this data to exist or for it to be generated. OpenStreetMap is a similar, but it's entirely, I think it's mostly community-driven, OpenStreetMap. And I see ourselves pursuing something similar, a combination of using partners. So there's a lot of startups that work directly with farmers, that sell them inputs, that sell them agronomy services. My sister works for one of them, and they know what these farmers are producing. They know the production patterns. They understand what the farmers buy in terms of like from the agrovets and things like those. Those are potential partners that can help us gather data very quickly. But we can also rely on what's the word? Peer-to-peer, if you will. Or Motherland could hire an army of people to go around farms. So those are some ways I think we could pursue.
I think we should. So in order to make this conceptually scalable right from the beginning, I would say let's not hire an army, because then we have to hire an army across the globe, right? So let's be clever about this and see, like you said, there must be companies providing the inputs or some other type of service, and they already have that connection with the producer. What we need to understand is, could they benefit, or how could they benefit from inserting data through an API? So we have established that there is a good chance that organizations like PricePally benefit from it. Now the next really interesting question is there a startup, let's say somewhere around Lagos, that does this? And then we focus it geographically in one region, let's say Lagos. Wherever we find that combination of the startup that's close to consumer and the startup that's or the organization that's close to the consumer and the organization that's close to the producer, and then we describe, or we offer to provide a data pool that they can put into data into, get benefits out of, and bridge the gap between the two in a way that is generic enough so that we can add more parts on both ends and in between. But then we have one concrete case. So let's say if Luther today says, oh, I know a startup or an organization that has that connection on the producer side around Lagos, then we could decide that we want to have that conversation with that company. And if that company likes the idea and commits to implementing it, then we can actually go out and say, okay, so now we can build this database. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
I think it makes sense. Another problem though is that this data input has to be consistent, and because it goes with time. Like some food items every 3 months they've sold, or some are every 1 month. So it's like an everyday thing. Currently at Price Valley, we do keep records every day. Like we have someone in charge of imputing those things every day. So that's also a challenge, to be able to do that over time for a long time, for that data to make sense, because every time I come there, I have to be able to find the relevant data per time. So that's another challenge.
Can you dig deeper into that challenge, please? I'm not sure I'm fully grasping what your challenge is.
Okay, so take for instance, you are keeping data about the food items available at the farm in Lagos today. By next week, you have to update that data because probably the person has a 3 ton of cassava or something ready, and by that day the person has sold off. By next week, person has sold off, or the person is planting new, cassava stubs and all that. That has changed. You need anybody coming online has to know that, okay, this thing has changed here. This farmer has sold off what he has. He's expecting a new set in a couple of weeks. The data. I mean, the data, data is dynamic when it comes to what we're trying to do. Like, it is everyday updates. From my experience, like, okay, we try to monitor the price, at price value. So it's an everyday thing. Like, once we make an order today for some items, we have to keep the price of that particular day because tomorrow is different. So that's something that would occur in this case as well when you're talking about supply, or even consumer demands can be, it doesn't have to like change very much, but I'm sure supply will, like, we would have to like update those information from time to time.
Okay,
I hope you get me.
I understand. Yeah, that's absolutely crucial, and I think that's a more difficult aspect to this whole story. So I'm glad you're pointing that out. Which means that so let's build on the cassava image. So 1 ton gets sold to a wholesale, and then another portion of it gets brought to the market, and you need to know that in time, right? So that you know how much you can actually obtain through that channel. That means that the producer's bookkeeping essentially has to also be connected, and then
Yeah.
I doubt that there's anything like bookkeeping when you're on the market, right? But that would be something that I'd be curious about to hear from Anesu. Anesu, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay. So did you hear the last points?
I was actually about to ask us something. It might be bringing people back a little, but I want to understand on Kiptu's document, the part where there's the open database of producer solution providers. Carry on. Let's say I want to understand what information will be uploaded on that database. And as an assumption, what are we assuming that information will do? Sorry to bring everyone back, but I need to understand that small part.
But that's what we're trying to figure out. So the currently the data that needs to be in there is what is the produce that is available. So what do you have? And then you need to update. So so let's say you have 2 tons of something, and you're selling one of those tons. We need to know that in the database somehow, so that a price pally, for example, or the price pally in your region knows that they can only order 1 ton and not 2. And now the question is, how could this be made easy for you to update that information on the go? Whenever you sell something, that you that it's automatically put into the database and updated.
Okay, so here in let me say Zimbabwe. I cannot speak for other African countries, but I think it applies. Not everyone has access to internet every day for them to update that information. Not everyone has even access to something simple as WhatsApp. So I would propose that we will have 1 or 2 people here in Motherland who will always be in touch with the farmers in their region. Let's say we're in one region. We'll be in touch with the farmers on a daily or every other day basis to update that information so that it be convenient for them, so that also the information will always be up to date. That's one. Then the second thing, which is I think also a question, this information that will be put in this on the database, consumers will also use this, right? Before they order or before they buy from the farmers using our database.
Well, maybe not users directly, more organizations like Price Pally, they would use information.
This is also one question I think we need to understand who might be interested to drive the creation of data for the system. Yeah, and then we go back to the demand side. Yeah, on the one hand side, it's the demand side, the consumer. Yeah, but the consumer is probably not directly communicating with the farmer. So it might be Price Pally or someone else who can estimate the economic value of getting the data from the farmer, because it has to be worth something, because it will drive efficiency, yeah, of buying and distributing goods from the farmer to the people. And if you would have the data, yeah, for example, at Price Pally, that would probably boost your ability to sell stuff at a reasonable price. Yeah, and that's why there is behind that is an economic value. And the question is, yeah, how those drivers, like for example, Price Pally, might support such a phase of saying, okay, we need to gather data. Yeah, and if we have the data, we can evaluate if this is really adding value. Yeah, and then it might become the flywheel that we are looking for, that Price Pally is getting more and more value out of the system. Yeah, and then it will turn itself, because then also the farmer would say, okay, I want to sell via Price Pally. Then Price Pally says, okay, cool, you can do that. You will make better revenue, and we are an honest partner of the farmers, yeah, and we have shown that. But to become a partner of Price Pally as a farmer, you need to put in your data, yeah, because otherwise the requirement is not fulfilled to work with us, yeah. And so I think these are the interrelationships we need to understand. Who is in the end the driver of accumulating the data and taking care of that the farmer is willing and also able to put in the data that is really required into some kind of a system, yeah, whether it's via a WhatsApp, via an SMS, via whatever. But this is then the technology piece where you see, okay, we need some kind of APIs to handle that and make this data accessible. This is then just the technical exercise we need to solve then.
I'd like to put it into a shorter version.
Go for it.
So Anesu, if there was, if Motherland asked you via WhatsApp as a message, Anesu, what did you sell today? Would you answer?
Well, yes, I would answer it. I would answer it because it's a requirement. If I would have joined Motherland community, it's a requirement for me to update you guys with that information. I would answer that. Out of 25 kgs, I sold 5 kgs. I'll answer it. But I'm also thinking, well, now that we can include WhatsApp, I think it would work, because I'm also thinking that this information platform, if customers will come onto it, put their information as well as to what they consume per day and what they would require per week to be delivered in their houses, or what they need in their food basket, we probably would have to be the drivers of updating that information, because we want this thing to be convenient, we want it to work, we have to push it.
Maybe to make it really plain simple, just one short sentence now. So in the end, there is demand, we know that. And if we would be able to push it really via a communication channel to farmers that know there is motherland, and I can support that. And we would, for example, ask for, we are looking for, I don't know, 500 kilos of tomato for next week. Who can deliver? Yeah. So this is a call for information. Who has the supply? Yeah, and how much supply to be able to supply the 500 kilos? Yeah, and so I think we need to go into this really hands-on solution mode, that we can start gathering the data, maybe also what is available next week. Maybe this is already enough, yeah, to know, to build up a database that will become more efficient if we have database then for the months and years to come. Tiptu, you also wanted to say something, sorry.
Yeah, I think what you're asking is important, but I think there are two. It sounds to me like there are two things we're wrestling with simultaneously. Maybe three. The first one is being, what are the motivations on the producer side, on the provider side, and even the demand side, right? So the solution provider side, like Price Valley, what are the motivations for participating in the system? That is one question, right? The other question is about, how do we obtain the data? And they're related, of course. And the third issue is more technical. I would say we shouldn't worry too much about it. It's probably the product of how I expressed it. I used words like APIs. Not everyone is technical, but I think what we can just accept, or rather, we can understand it as a common language, a way for different systems to speak with each other. So somebody who's using an SMS or a WhatsApp can still interact with somebody who's using like a smartphone or even like a website. So I know I complicated it, but really that's the meaning. It's a common interface for people, for different groups and people to interact using a common language. So on to the first two questions then. I think, I really think that we have two separate questions, but they are related. One, what are the motivations on the farmer side to push data into the system? And what are the same motivations on the producer and the provider side, solution provider side, as well as the demand side? That's what I'm hearing.
So I want to give it a little twist. So let's assume that we find a way to distribute a Motherland WhatsApp number, which you can use, which people can use just to say, I need these things. And then let's assume we somehow can program some magic that from the text that they write, we extract the products and the quantities, maybe with some questions that we ask them. So did we understand correctly that you want 3 bananas and 2 tomatoes? And then we have that in a database. And then an organization like Price Valley can look at, can receive that data and say, oh, there's 10 people looking for bananas in this region, and on the other hand, we have the same type of input channel for the producers, asking the producers every day, what did you sell? So we have an updated database, and Price Power can do the mapping in between. And so what we're providing essentially is the raw data layer that organizations like Price Pally can build upon, right? So with that construction, if we actually manage to build this magic of interpreting what people are putting into on both ends, and we, as a first step, provide a database to Price Pally to this information, then it's a question of spreading those two WhatsApp numbers in and around Lagos. And that could be maybe an interesting twist on the whole story. I'd be curious to hear Luther's take on this, and also see Tawanda is posting stuff.
Yeah, okay. I think that would definitely be very useful, because now you are getting demand. So any solution provider would want to definitely see that. So it could be that, and it could be that if we could do that, that could be for a provider, for a solution provider to be able to get access to such information. Then maybe they have to like input their own data to be able to use that. So I mean they will have to also feed the system some data, like probably what they sold or whatever it is. So that's like creating a loop and it's continuing. So I think it makes sense. But another issue would be that it might be hard for people to jump. Okay, yeah, I don't worry about that. Okay, I was thinking it might be hard for solution providers to want to do that, but I don't think so on the second thought, because what they are looking for is definitely the demand, like consumers. So I think the bulk of the work will be, for that idea, will be how to get. So it could probably be like a bidding platform at the end of the day, because if you send out what people want to these solution providers, all of them will have different pricing, and the consumer would have to like choose which one he wants to go with. I don't know, I'm just thinking what that would look like eventually. So but I definitely, anything that that matches, that brings, that aggregates demand, definitely would cause some interest.
Luther, I'm just curious about one thing. As a solution provider, what are you most concerned about? Or conversely, what would you like to see out of such a system?
Now, so on the immediate, what I would like to see is demand, is grow my customer base. That's the immediate. But I'm also concerned about the future. And that's why I'm interested in data. That's why we keep data, so that we can, along the way, understand what exactly is going on. There's a lot of problems in Nigeria, the food system. number one, the food system works, but it's very inefficient. So to understand that inefficiency and be able to do something about it, I definitely know that we would have to gather data and, you know, interpret whatever we have probably in a year or two from now to be able to get what exactly is going on. So it's those two things. I would like to build my customer base, and I would also like uh, insight, you know, that I mean, information, like real solid information, not necessarily, you know, what people are buying is important, but more importantly, I want to know why prices go up at particular times of the year, or why there's so much losses, as what exactly happens from farm before it gets to the people. You know, critical questions. I like to understand critical problems that we have in the system, and I know, you know, data can unlock some of that. So those are the two important things I would like to get out of a system like that.
So if I understand it right, it's more like insights for future and growth, you know, growing your customer base. Is that right?
Yes, that's how I would define it.
Tawanda, do you want to talk about Isoko? Because that looks.
Okay. Hi. Right. For Isoko, I think we beat them in Zimbabwe in 2015. We were bidding for the same NGO clients. So I would consider them like the big boy in terms of can I say the e-agriculture space in Africa, considering that they're funded to the hilt in terms of millions of dollars, whether it's from USAID, several, I think, venture capital firms, and they have presence in about, I think, 17 or so African countries, from the last time I checked. And there are a couple of things I've picked up as I've listened to your conversation, because some of these things are things I think we've looked at Hurukuro for a long time. We've sat down and even discussed quite a number of the issues you're talking about. Okay, the first underlying assumption you really have to make is the farmers want to make money. I think Anis just clearly said that. And that's going to be a key driver for their motivation. If you remember, even in the last discussions we made, that farmers at times make growing decisions based on hearsay. I would say hearsay or false data, in the sense that maybe I've just looked at the next farm and I saw somebody growing something, and I didn't check for myself what it is that they're growing in terms of, do I have a market for that? And I just did that, and because I thought it was profitable. So, you know, not wanting to cut too much into that, but one of the tools I would want if I was a farmer is a market comparison tool. I need to understand that which market is offering what price, and how much is it going to take. I like the fact that you are talking about integrating different startups for delivery, and even the price per aspect. I think that's fantastic. How Isoko works now in terms of data collation, if it's in marketplaces, it's going to depend. In some cases, they use farmers' unions. For example, the Zimbabwe Farmers Union. They have a partnership together, although I have to say that one is NGO driven or funded, where they basically have market agents. By market agents, how do I give an example? It's just basically maybe someone with a cell phone who lives maybe near the marketplace, or who is actually at the marketplace, who just goes around and asks a few vendors, how much are these tomatoes going for today? And then what they simply do is then they just send that information via SMS or via an app, right? If we want to be a bit more complex about it. Tomatoes today are so many dollars per kg, or so many cents for a packet. If it's maize meal today, a bucket is maybe $20 for a bucket, and so forth. And then they have a standardized measure of the goods, so that it's standardized across all markets. So if we're saying a bucket, how do we equate what is a bucket worth in terms of kgs or pounds or so forth? Typically here, I think a bucket is about 20 kgs or so, if I remember correctly. I'm sure Annecy can help me. But basically, this is how they do it in terms of data collection across markets, having a few enumerators. For other startups that I've seen, there's another startup, I'm forgetting the name, but this one is a local startup. What they just simply did is they just set up a small little kind of like office right at the marketplace. And within that office, that is where they just basically go out into the market, collect the prices. Once they've collected the prices, they go back, and then they upload market prices, say, on a website, or if they have a bulk SMS customer list, send it via bulk SMS. I'm forgetting the name of it's called Mcampo. I'll put the link to their website a bit later on. These are some of the ways that they collect data. And then as you're looking at it, in terms of the issues of somebody mentioned about how do you get the farmers to get on board the platform. There are quite a number of ways you could look at. One way is if you are saying that the farmers are based in communities. I know Sebastian mentioned about the market gardening, but if we're talking market gardening, we're assuming then they're close to the city or urban areas. But if we're saying they're in a distance of, say, 40, 50 Ks plus, what you need to now begin to look at again is how do you sell this concept to community influencers, right? Community influencers, maybe they could be the local traditional leaders, your chiefs, your village heads. That's one. Number two, another set of community influencers. It could be even people from the religious organizations, the church heads, and so forth. Who else can be community influencers that I know? Yeah, even teachers in schools. You know, teachers have a lot of respect because of the value that they bring to communities, right? The reason why you want to have these community influencers is that the fastest way to get something moving in rural areas is through word of mouth. That is the reality. So if you want people to actually know, look, there is this service for you as a farmer, this is what it can do for you, and so on. We'd have to factor in how do we get the community influencers into the picture. What else can I think for now that's what I'll share. I think I'll just continue listening to the conversation, and I'll chip in when I think I have something more pertinent or important to factor in. Thank you.
So to me, when I look at the Ezoko website, it looks very close to what we're discussing here. Very close. So maybe it's worth having a conversation with them.
What's the website address?
I think it's esoko, ESOKO.com. Yeah.
Just put it in the chat as a link.
So if I understand it correctly, Tawanda, are they a market intelligence solution, primarily with respect to market price?
I would say they're more, okay, sorry, please ask your question again. Maybe I jumped the gun.
Yeah, is it a market intelligence sort of like a product? in this, because you mentioned that they have an agent network that collects price information using like over an SMS or an app, or I think you call them enumerated. Would you characterize them as
Okay,
that?
yeah. Initially, when they started in Ghana, they were a market intelligence solution because they started as a partnership between MTN and themselves. And I'm not too sure, I think it was USA that was also involved, where they started by trying to distribute information to farmers. The whole being that it would influence better, production choices through farmers getting more knowledge about prices at the market and trying to avoid the whole issue of middlemen taking advantage of farmers because they lacked that knowledge. But now it's more of a hodgepodge of solutions, I would say, in the sense that they've gone beyond just market intelligence. They're also looking at precision agriculture solutions and many other things, right? Of which I like the direction that Motherland is going in the sense that we may have to, okay, maybe for you, Kipto, maybe what you might have to even think about is customizing the experience in the sense that as a farmer, what is the basic information that I would want to get, right? If I'm a consumer, I'm coming, what is the basic information I would need to just get? If I'm someone like a value chain actor like Luther, what is the basic information from that angle that I would want to get in that kind of order? From the farmer side, because yeah, I speak to a lot of farmers and I mostly work with farmers. One thing, yes, market intelligence is one. A lot of solutions I've seen out there, which is where they fail. And to some extent, I can even talk of the local giant here, Eco Farmer, Isoko as well. I've seen that this is a failing in terms of the market intelligence, is that there is no hardcore market analysis. What am I saying by market analysis? As a farmer, I want to have a look, analyze a trend, right? If we're saying around this time, for the past 2 years, onion prices have been at a certain level, how does that influence my decision making in terms of what do I produce around this time? If we are talking about, for example, I want to do avocados, right? Avocados, I know if they're done right, they fetch good prices, because you know that there are also other people who would want to buy them and export, So now if we're saying avocados, I need to then know what is the right time for me to start planting those avocados so that I am prepared for the next season. At the same time as I am planting, maybe this is my first time doing avocados. Do I know what nutrients are required for avocados in terms of fertilizers, and what are the prices again? I'm sorry, this is seeming like it's backward, but this is the kind of information a farmer would want to know. Do we have value chain actors who can help me in terms of the resources, in terms of inputs, who will tell me this is the prices? Say if it's, okay, I'm just going to use the generic fertilizers that we know here. I don't know about other places, but we've got ammonium nitrate, compound T. These are basic fertilizers that most farmers use, right? If it's ammonium nitrate, can I go to a fertilizer producer and they'll tell me this is the price via our platform, right? At the same time, if we're talking about market analysis, can I have information for the past 2 seasons or the past 3 years to know what was the average buying price? What's the general trend? Is it going up? Is it going down? Or it's just static at where it is at the level? And also in terms of the future forecast, what is the future forecast of the trend? Does it look like there's going to be more demand for that product, or this is something that we can just look at for this season, but for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, I need to start shifting my focus elsewhere? So these are some of the other elements of market intelligence that a lot of these platforms are lacking. and it may be something we might want to look at. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered you, Kiptu, or if you have more questions, I'm happy to reply.
Yeah. I think you have generally, and I guess we still have a lot more to discuss. But what I would be very interested in is to understand better, like what is different with what we are describing here from what Isoko is already doing. Because I imagine like none of us here would want to reinvent the wheel, like Sebastian was saying.
Of course. Okay, firstly, Isoko is more, how do I say it? It's something that's more driven towards the corporates, or should I say the big NGOs, because these guys are trying to say who is our customer for this kind of data or for what we are doing. Whereas we're saying ours is a people-powered or people-driven approach. So you find that even when in terms you look at the data, it then becomes, I don't want to say biased, but can I say it becomes more favored towards who is the customer who wants to pay for that data. For example, in Zimbabwe, they had partnered with, like I said before, the Zimbabwe Farmers Union. And apart from the Zimbabwe Farmers Union, they also partnered with a major commodity trader, which is also happens to be one of the largest, if not the largest, milling company in the country at the moment. And as a result, they are now they had to focus on a fixed pool, can I say, of information. Because this was a milling company, then they had to be biased towards grains. And there's no longer much in terms of covering other issues like horticulture again. And again, because they are working with a milling company, it means that for competitors, it's difficult. You can't give the farmer now a full picture as you're trying to actually satisfy your big client or your big corporate. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. You're almost creating a kind of like monopoly around information, and also trying to promote a monopoly scenario for your client. So this is one way where we are differing from Isoko. Another area where we would have to look at is in terms of the collaborations or the partnerships we would need to form. How are they going to be structured? I remember I spoke about community influencers. In that aspect, does that mean we're also going to have to try and work with NGOs who have presence in the communities to get our message across? Does that mean that we have to work with small-scale agro-dealers? A definition I have of agro-dealers, this is a bit different from the general understanding I think you would have. The agro-dealer, for me, or when I understand the term as a Zimbabwean, is that when I go to a rural area, there are certain areas where we have a set of small shops, right? Within those small shops, there's one particular shop that's called a general dealer. Now, what happens with the general dealer is they sell a mix of stuff. They can sell clothes, they can sell hardware, they can sell agricultural implements, agricultural inputs. They sell a whole lot of stuff. Now, these guys are also called agro dealers because you have the input providers. By input providers, I'm talking about seed companies, fertilizer companies. These guys come to these general dealers or general stores and they say, please, for this season, will you be our agent, or will you be our linkage with the farmer? Right. And this is another channel we can actually use to say, can you promote farmers coming through you to, can you promote our platform to farmers if the farmers happen to come through you, because they have a lot of interaction with the farmers. I recall some time back, there was a concept that was worked on where I think it was one of the agricultural parastatals in Zimbabwe Agricultural Marketing Authority, where they were working on a concept where they would integrate these agro dealers, or let me say general dealers in each rural area, to act as a platform where farmers could actually bring together their goods. And that would be like a kind of collection point, say for a buyer. So if we're saying maybe we have 10 to 20 farmers who are all doing tomatoes, onions, or whatever, and they're now ready for harvest, or they've come to the point of harvest. Say, for example, it's now been advertised on the platform that there's so many tons or so many hundreds of kgs of onions available in this particular area. To give an example, let's just say Kariba. In Kariba, we have 200 kgs of tomatoes there. And maybe a buyer has come up and said, we can take on this load. Then the agro dealer is now the place where you can say this is going to be the collection point. And it's arranged, whether it's a startup that then goes and picks it up and takes it to the next point. And if it's price pally, that's then saying that we are the ones who've got the customer for the 200 kgs of tomatoes. That's one way of looking at it. So I mean, there are multiple ways you can look at the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense. Sorry if I've confused anyone.
No.
So all very valuable information that what we need now to process is, because what we start doing now is understanding the landscape deeper and better. And I think this is probably a good thing to do, because we shouldn't reinvent the wheel. I think that was an assumption that we had early on. And the question is, where do we position in this whole landscape of solution providers in that field? Yeah, because we know there are tons of NGOs active, and also companies like SAP try to bring the farmers and the data of the farmers online. Yeah, but it happens mostly, so far as I know, for export. It is not utilized for internal value chains, because there is no ask from the demand side, or there is not enough value add from the demand side created internally of the countries or within Africa. It's all mainly done for export. Yeah, and the question now is, where do we position in this? And we came up with the hypotheses that it would make sense to start and focusing on getting the demand side in Africa connected, because our hypothesis is that the demand side will create the pull towards the supply side, and we need to overcome the inefficiencies. And I think that we probably still are scratching on the tip of the iceberg, because there is happening so much and there is so much knowledge around. But the question is, how could Motherland connect and collaborate maybe with the existing initiatives, whether they're startups or communities, as you mentioned? Because I absolutely agree, we need to go by the communities to create value for the communities. It's all happening because of existing networks and trust, etc. And I think this is really bringing me back to the point, and the thinking is of where to, or maybe first understand what is around, what is working and what's not working, because probably Ezoko also has some challenges that they are not able to scale to a sufficient amount. And if we learn more, then we could can work on the positioning of ourselves with Motherland more decently, and not looking around too much in the fog of and the noise of what's currently happening. And this is my conclusion of that. Maybe we should have a more decent look and understanding what's happening here.
I want to build on what I heard in the sense that um, it seems like, but we have to validate that through a conversation with the people from Ezoko, that that what they're doing is skewed by their financing interests, right?
Mm.
And that usually happens as soon as there is a financial interest anywhere. So,
Yeah.
in terms of motherland, what I would suggest is that we adopt a certain mindset that is driven by the following image. Imagine we're building a piece of public infrastructure for the future. So let's say we're building something that used to be the physical space where the market happened, right? And now we're replacing that physical space with a digital space. And once we have done that, once we have created the infrastructure, like we've in the physical space, you create space and you make it maybe safe from environment or whatever you need to do, and then you're done, right? You don't need to come back every time, right? And if it's a public thing, then you don't need to charge people for it, right? Because the public owns it. It's a commons for everyone. And I think this is the notion I would like for us to adopt, to say that we're building digital infrastructure that is part of the future, that represents the marketplace in a generic form. And once we're done, we can step back and allow others to build thriving businesses on top of that. Right? And so I could see Luther building a thriving business on top of that. But I could also see a pivot in Twende to use that information, right? So and I can see Anesso in there. So I and then we can all step back and benefit from it with the things that we're building. So if you take on that notion, then the game changes. Just wanted to add that.
I'm sorry, Thomas. Can you, sorry to bring you back, can you repeat the picture that you just painted? I got lost.
Of course, yeah. So sorry, I was talking for too long. So currently, there is some spot somewhere in a village, in a city, near a city, the physical spot where people go to offer their produce and other people come to buy it. That's called a market. That's a very inefficient way of organizing distribution of goods. Now we have a much more efficient way of doing that by using technology. So we can replace that physical space by something else. And once we have created that digital space that replaces the physical space, there's nothing for us left to do, right? That's just like if somebody creates that physical space, afterwards, there's nothing left for them to do. And I think we are successful if we don't have to continue to work on it, right? That's when, if we become obsolete, that's when we're successful.
Okay, so if I understood the picture you painted, we're kind of creating a virtual marketplace where the consumers, where demand and supply come to meet, and they exchange goods and money.
Absolutely. And we try to provide like the floor, right? We just provide the floor, the basis, and then other organizations can create the conversation, the optimization, like price pally, right? Like bringing multiple customers together and optimizing that process, and benefit from that, right? We just provide the floor for others to build on. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I like how you put it, Thomas, that you're successful if you become, if and at the point when you become obsolete. And my understanding of it is that that's at the point at which the supply chain actors do not need us.
And I think, especially when we take into consideration that this is, as Thomas put it, the floor, yeah, to put in companies, yeah, that try to solve something like Twende or Price Pally and all the others, yeah, and I think then we are on a good way, because then we are not dependent from large corporations. Yeah, it's done by the entrepreneurs in Africa. Yeah, you know the communities, you have the access to the communities, and we are not spending tons of NGO money to make it work. Yeah, and use this as a big incentive carrot to start and run a project, and will cost millions, but in the end, yeah, probably it will run dry, because when the incentive is not there anymore, then it will start to get yeah, go to a stop. Yeah, and what we need to do is to create value for the Twendes, the Price Pallies, the Anestus, and everyone around that says, okay, I'm not maybe building it, but without Motherland, I wouldn't be able to drive my business in a way that is creating business, yes, but on the other hand side, also really to drive the development of the food supply chain, and really make this efficient and also sustainable for the people that are involved into that. And I think then it's driven by the actors, yeah, because they want to find and drive a solution, and they will make it happen, but we need to do it from a platform point of perspective, and need to build the middle ground, yeah, to do that.
Okay, so what is the? I think we're at a good point. I think we have. It feels like we have a common understanding now that there is a Zoko, and I think we should have a conversation with them. But at the same time, we should now look into what is the next concrete step to move that mission forward, to be able to ask the right questions. And I'm just going to propose one thing as a starting point for that conversation. How about each of you? So maybe Tawanda and Anesu together, because you're geographically close, but each of you, until let's say next week, can you find the participating startups or organization in your region for prototyping that? So is there a Price Pally somewhere in Kenya, right? Is there something that connects the farmers also somewhere in Kenya, right? The same for Zimbabwe, and is there something that connects the farmers around Lagos? If we have these pairs, then we should have these conversations and discuss how we can connect these ends in the best possible way. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Just want to open it.
I think it makes sense. But before I offer my thoughts, I had one concern about the digital marketplace or digital public and the public digital infrastructure that we're proposing. I know that in physical marketplaces, somebody built it, usually like a local government, and they charge people, the traders or whoever is selling there, some little tax to operate the market, to keep the market working, in terms of the shared facilities, cleaning, security, and all those things. How would we sustain this marketplace or infrastructure ourselves? I'm sorry to take you back a bit, but I thought it's something that I find concerning if we cannot think through it. It does sound nice in theory, but like in practice, what does it mean?
Yeah. So I think, go ahead, Thomas.
A digital marketplace scales by nature, right? You build it once and you can use it, and if it's built right, you can use it all across the globe, right? You don't have to build a copy of Google for every country, right? So that's the main difference. The cost of creation occurs only once.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there might be cost of maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
We will have to see about that. But the cost of maintenance cannot be very high. I can totally see a very small team of dedicated humans manage that, right? So that's when once it's built, I think receiving a very, very small fee from participants in some way, but really tiny, then we can make it feasible and self-sustaining. It doesn't have to grow. It doesn't have to be a multi-billion-dollar business. It has to work. That's all. So like to build on the analogy, if you put the floor down for the physical marketplace, after the market happened, somebody has to clean it up. Something like this, right? And we have to figure out how much that would be, how much that costs, etc. But I don't think it's going to be much. So I think it's totally doable.
Yeah, so to add to that, yes, there will be a cost associated with, definitely. I think the question is how to put a good argument together that what we envision is really creating an impact and is creating a solution that all these new players, like you as startups or on farmers and consumers, will really profit from that. If we are able to show that this is potentially working because we have validated it, I think then it will be a really easy pitch to go to NGOs, foundations, etc., to get the initial funding. Because if we know that we can make it work somewhere and we have somehow talked to the stakeholders, for example, in Kenya or in Nigeria or in Zimbabwe, and we have made our work, and we have made it not because there's money that was given to us to do it, and because there was a call by an NGO to do such a work. We do it because we see the potential. And I think this is a necessary step really to go to fundraising. And then we can, if we have done our work by validating those hypotheses we haven't done yet. And I think then it's a good pitch to go to the people and the organizations where the money is. And I have no doubt that we get the initial funding. And if we have done that, yeah, then there will be a fee for the ones that are making money utilizing the infrastructure, and they have to pay something for it. Yeah, and then it will work. And we see other examples that also work in a way, for example, with a foundation. Yeah, look at Mozilla Foundation, or look at Wikipedia, or any other kind of public good related organizations. Yeah, and that are not in private hands, so to say. And I think this is something we can solve then later, but I think we need to focus on now, are there players that will profit in terms of utilization of technology and scale in their markets? And if we can prove that, and we know what we need to build, I think then we have a very concrete pitch to go for funding for that, or looking for partners that are already start doing that, and we are empowering them to do it. Because we don't say we want to found a startup. We want to build this solution space that enable you to scale in a totally different way to solve the problems in the food supply chain and value chain in Africa. This is our purpose, right?
So what we need is, and that's a question to you guys now, is we need one organization that is in contact with the farmers, and in the same region, one organization that is in contact with the consumers. And the question is, can you find this combination in your region? And what do you need to do that, to find that combination? Because once we found that combination, we can learn what Sebastian just said. And I don't know exactly when, I think on the 18th or something, I have a call with somebody who's got some money, who's really radical in the way he looks at the future and what needs to be built, and he could be the perfect partner for this. So if there's already some concrete learning by then I will add that to my conversation with him, right? Because we can do this. We can, but we need to have these two ends. Yeah.
May I add what you? I mean, we will need. So okay, for instance, at Price Valley, we are in contact with more of the consumers, but we also have quite a number of farmers that we work directly with. So, and I know other organizations, a couple of, probably one or two of them, who work with farmers directly. But my question would be that, what do you want to learn, and what are the questions?
So what we need to learn is, so we learned already that it would be interesting for Price Valley to be part of that such an ecosystem. What we need to learn is, in the case of Lagos or Nigeria, is, are the organizations also interested?
Sorry, I can't hear you well. Can you speak up a bit? Hello?
The question is,
okay, better.
The question is, are the organizations that, the question is, are the organizations that are on the other side, on the farmer side, are they also happy to participate in such an ecosystem, and what would they require that ecosystem to do for them? That's the question. Luther,
Okay. Yeah. Well, so probably I'll just ask them. So yeah, so that would mean that you how do I put this? Yeah, so I can ask them that, but I would also need a so for instance, I'll need to know okay, now we don't have that product yet, but we have an idea that we want to build a platform where anyone in the ecosystem can get the most important, you know, information or desire of that platform. So we just want to know what they want, right?
correct. I'm
Okay.
thinking, as you were saying that, maybe what is needed is a little presentation, just like a 3-slide deck saying, this is what we want to build. Is that good for you?
Okay, to add on to that, Thomas, if we are to build that platform where the farmers will answer, the farmers and the solution providers, current solution providers, where they are to answer that, yes, we need it, and then they'll tell us why we need them, and then further the reasons why. I was also thinking, if we're going to have a meeting next week, we also, me and Tawanda, and then Kitu and and Luther, we team up we create a small business model of that virtual marketplace using those answers that we would have got. We come back next week, we present them so as to further understand exactly where we want this to go.
That sounds amazing. If the others are into doing that, totally amazing.
It's a good idea, but I'm not sure. I have a heavy week ahead with Twende, so I could not promise that I'll be able to deliver on that. But I do think it will be hugely helpful if we have something written, either in the form of a slide or even just a concept note similar to the one.
Maybe we find the time to prepare this type of information, however it should be represented, and also think about our main questions that we have. Yeah, because then we can do that in a structured way, and maybe this is the task for the next week to prepare that. Yeah, and if there is a chance to talk already to potential sides of the platform, that would probably help, and we shouldn't postpone it too much, but let's create the content and then use the chances we have.
So are you proposing for next week to be a working session to produce that document, or rather to make the pitches to these organizations?
I think what Sebastian mentioned would be more precise so that we are on the same page. The questions we want to ask, what we are proposing, the ideas we have in our mind, we should gather that in the document and sieve out the ones that need to go out to the different stakeholders that we want to bring on board. That would be my take.
Sure.
So I can offer to produce a first version of a few slides that make this probably more concrete and more graspable to people. And that allows you guys to reach out to potential participants in your area. And then for me, the goal for next week would be to discuss what you found, who you found, and to organize conversations that need to happen with those people. Does that make sense for everyone?
Hello, sorry, Thomas.
Yes.
I had lost connection. I think I lost it for about 4 minutes.
Yeah, don't worry. So we were discussing what we should try and achieve for next week. And the conclusion essentially is that there needs to be a first written description of what we want to do. And I offered to create that first version that then enables all of you to reach out to potential participants in that system. And so that next week we sort through the findings you had, the people and organizations, and prepare, in the sense that Kipto said we're going to have a working session, prepare the interaction, the questions, the interviews with these organizations, so they can happen quickly and with focus. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yep, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense to me too.
Beautiful. So we'll share that with Anesu and Elizabeth, and I will prepare something. I will do that on a Google slide to allow collaboration. And I will send the link on our WhatsApp as soon as I can. Cool.
Yeah, makes sense. Can we use the same air table, or what? Where should we use to compile the data?
Compile the data for the ones we found?
Yeah, because my understanding is our job this week is to compile a list of organizations connected to both sides.
Yeah, good question. Where do we collect that information? I guess we could use the Airtable.
Okay, or use some Google Sheets, whichever.
But I think it could be already sufficient if you have like one or two. So then there's not going to be a lot. So I don't think we need to connect with 40. We need to connect with one or two that are really, and maybe pre-connect with them and tell them, okay, we're thinking about this. Might you be interested in having a conversation? Not more, right? And then we know we can have that conversation. So Anesu, are you back?
Yes, but I don't know for how long. Something is probably wrong.
Okay. I will. I'll just make it very quick. So I'll put together a slide deck to explain what we want to do.
Okay.
Use that slide deck to find the participants. So one on the end of the producers and one on the end of the consumers. And ask them if they would be interested in having a conversation around participating in that. And if all of you guys do that, next week we should have 3 pairs of these participants that we can have these conversations with. And if they would be part of it, then we really have something that we can work with, and we can become concrete. So that's, I think, the conclusion for today.
Okay.
Cool. Anything to add?
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice weekend.
Good point. One question. Next week. When?
Friday.
Friday?
So, I have Friday and Saturday blocked next week, unfortunately. So we could do maybe Thursday, maybe Sunday, or the week after that.
So I'm not available on Thursday and on Sunday.
Okay.
Then probably the week after.
So then I'll put together a doodle first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Stay
everyone.
safe. Looking forward to see you then. Bye bye.
Bye bye.